For decades now, we've been bombarded with the message that cash is trash. Financial gurus, investment advisors, and market experts constantly warn us about the dangers of holding too much cash. Inflation will erode its value, you're missing out on market gains, your money isn't working for you. Has this ever happened to you? Someone making you feel foolish for maintaining a cash reserve while markets are soaring? Have you ever watched in horror as your carefully constructed investment portfolio crumbled before your eyes during a market crash, while others somehow managed to not just survive, but thrive? What if I told you the difference between financial devastation and opportunity during market turmoil isn't intelligence, fancy degrees, or complex strategies, but something far more basic? Here's the brutal truth they won't tell you. When markets collapse, and they always do eventually, it's not the smartest investor who survives. It's not the one with the most sophisticated strategy or the highest returns during the bull market. It's the investor who still has cash when panic hits. The voices that once mocked your caution suddenly go silent when their portfolios implode and they have nothing left to buy the bargains that inevitably appear. Consider this shocking reality. Even the most prestigious financial institutions in the world aren't immune to this fundamental mistake. Harvard University, with its endowment managed by brilliant minds with Ivy League credentials, once made a catastrophic error that should serve as a warning to us all. They invested virtually all their capital, including parents' prepaid tuition funds, at market peaks. When the inevitable crash came, this beacon of intellectual excellence spent years in financial agony, forced to sell valuable assets at fire sale prices simply to stay afloat. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you think about your financial strategy. If Harvard's team of financial experts, with their sophisticated models and endless resources, could fall victim to the cardinal sin of poor cash management, imagine how vulnerable the average investor might be. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The truth is that having liquidity when others don't isn't just about safety, it's about opportunity. It's about having the ability to act decisively when everyone else is frozen in fear. It's about being the one writing checks while others are begging for loans. While most investors are watching their life's work evaporate before their eyes, the investor with cash reserves is quietly purchasing premium assets at discount prices. What if I told you that maintaining adequate cash reserves isn't being overly cautious or missing out? It's actually the most aggressive and opportunistic strategy in the long run. This counterintuitive approach to wealth building flies in the face of conventional wisdom, but the evidence supporting it is overwhelming. When markets turn volatile, there's a hidden transformation that happens in the minds of investors. Those without adequate cash reserves suddenly find themselves trapped in a mental prison of their own making. It's not just about the financial limitations, it's about the psychological impact that cash scarcity creates during turbulent times. Think about it. When you're fully invested and the market starts to plummet, your decision-making capabilities become severely compromised. This isn't just theory, it's a fundamental truth about human psychology under pressure. Your mind races with worst-case scenarios. Your emotions override logical thinking, and suddenly you're making decisions from a place of desperation rather than strategic clarity. This is where the true value of cash reserves reveals itself. Cash doesn't just sit idle. It buys you something priceless, time, and time, in turn, buys you judgment. When others are scrambling to liquidate positions at devastating losses just to generate some cash flow, you have the mental space to assess the situation calmly. You're able to distinguish between temporary market hysteria and genuine structural problems. The mindset shift required here is profound. Most investors have been conditioned to view cash as a drag on performance, a wasted opportunity cost that's constantly being eroded by inflation. But this perspective misses the deeper truth. Cash isn't just money waiting to be deployed, it's optionality in its purest form. Consider the revelations that come during market crashes. Suddenly, incredible businesses are selling at fractions of their intrinsic value. The very same companies that were prohibitively expensive just months earlier become available at once-in-a-decade discounts. But these opportunities are only meaningful if you can actually seize them. Without cash, these moments of potential wealth creation simply become spectator events. You can see the opportunity but can't participate. This optionality is what separates the truly successful long-term investors from the rest. They understand that cash provides the freedom to act decisively when rare chances appear, without needing anyone's permission or approval. There's no scrambling to secure financing when banks have shut their doors. There's no desperate selling of quality assets to buy better opportunities. There's just the quiet confidence of writing checks when everyone else is frozen in fear. Behind the scenes of every major market dislocation, you'll find the same story playing out. Those with cash making decisions that transform their financial journey for decades to come. Warren Buffett didn't become one of history's greatest investors by being fully invested at all times. He became legendary by having the patience to hold substantial cash positions, sometimes for years, waiting for those precious moments when the market offered exceptional value. The impact of this approach extends beyond just financial returns. It creates a profound sense of agency and control over your investment decisions. Rather than being at the mercy of market fluctuations, you become an active participant who can respond to opportunities rather than react to threats. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how even the most prestigious institutions can fall victim to the siren song of being fully invested, and what we can learn from their costly mistakes. If you're starting to see investment cash in a new light, write "cash is optionality" in the comments below. There's a powerful analogy that I've found illuminates the true nature of cash in an investment portfolio. Think about how pilots approach flying. Any experienced aviator will tell you that altitude is your friend. It's not something you actively use during normal flight operations, but it represents a crucial safety margin when things go wrong. When engine trouble hits or unexpected turbulence appears, that extra altitude gives you the precious time needed to assess the situation, make corrections, and find a safe landing path. This is precisely the hidden truth about cash in your investment strategy. You don't need it all the time. In fact, during steady bull markets, it can feel like unnecessary caution. But when market turbulence hits, when the unexpected economic storm appears on the horizon, that cash buffer transforms from seeming excess into your financial lifeline. It gives you room to maneuver when markets turn against you, breathing space to make rational decisions rather than desperate ones. The journey of wealth creation isn't a smooth, predictable path. It's marked by long periods of relative calm, punctuated by brief, intense moments of extraordinary opportunity. This is perhaps the most profound revelation that experienced investors eventually discover. In your entire lifetime as an investor, you might only encounter 2 or 3 moments when it's truly raining gold, when extraordinary assets become available at once-in-a-generation prices. If you value financial wisdom that goes against the mainstream, hit that subscribe button to join our community of strategic investors who understand the power of patience and preparation. These rare windows fundamentally alter the trajectory of those prepared to act. Consider the investors who had cash available during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, able to purchase high-quality companies at 40 to 60% discounts, or those who could deploy capital during the brief but intense COVID market crash of March 2020. The wealth created during these compressed periods of opportunity often exceeds decades of normal investing. The mindset shift required is to recognize that your only job in these moments is to be holding a bucket, not a thimble. If you're caught without meaningful cash reserves when these rare moments arrive, you've effectively surrendered one of the few genuine wealth creation opportunities you'll ever encounter. The impact of missing just one such moment can be the difference between financial independence and perpetual struggle. Behind this approach lies a counterintuitive insight about patience. Most investors spend their entire careers trying to maximize returns during normal times, squeezing out every percentage point of performance. But the truly transformative gains come from having the discipline to accept underperformance during ordinary periods so you can massively outperform during extraordinary ones. This perspective requires abandoning the crowd's obsession with being fully invested at all times. It means embracing periods where your cash feels unproductive, where you might appear overly cautious to peers chasing every market movement. But this patience ultimately represents the highest form of financial wisdom. But what about inflation? What about the erosion of purchasing power that cash suffers? These are valid concerns, but they must be weighed against an even more important consideration. If you've ever experienced the regret of missing a major market opportunity because you were fully invested, type "waiting for rain" in the comments. The Harvard endowment case reveals one of the most profound revelations in investment psychology. Prestigious credentials and brilliant minds offer no protection against harsh market realities. Think about this for a moment. Here was an institution filled with some of the most intelligent financial experts on the planet, armed with advanced degrees, sophisticated models, and access to exclusive investment opportunities. Yet when markets crashed, none of that mattered. Their complex strategies and impressive academic pedigrees couldn't save them from the fundamental mistake of being fully invested with insufficient cash reserves. When liquidity dried up across the financial system, they faced the same brutal choices as any amateur investor who'd over-leveraged their portfolio, forced selling of assets at precisely the worst moment, locking in devastating losses that would take years to recover from. This cautionary tale illuminates a hidden truth about financial wisdom. Intelligence without prudence inevitably leads to disaster. The journey to investment success isn't just about being smart. It's about having the humility to recognize that markets are inherently unpredictable and preparing accordingly. No amount of complex financial modeling can substitute for the simple power of having dry powder when others don't. The transformation in mindset required here challenges one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs in modern finance, that cash is merely idle money dragging down portfolio returns. This perspective has been reinforced by decades of financial media coverage, advisor incentives, and institutional pressure to be fully invested at all times. We're constantly bombarded with messages about putting every dollar to work in the market. But what if this entire framework is fundamentally flawed? What wise investors understand is that cash isn't idle at all. It represents strategic patience in tangible form. It's the deliberate decision to wait for genuine opportunity, rather than forcing capital into suboptimal investments simply to avoid feeling left out. This patience, far from being a weakness, is actually one of the rarest and most valuable virtues in investing. The impact of this reframing is profound. When you view cash not as a drag on performance, but as stored potential energy ready to be deployed at the perfect moment, everything changes. Those periods when your cash position seems to be doing nothing transform from sources of anxiety into sources of strength. You're not missing out. You're gathering power for when it truly matters. Behind the scenes of most investment disasters, you'll find the same pattern: the inability to resist pressure, both external and internal, to always be fully invested. The financial industry has created a powerful narrative that equates activity with progress, fully invested with optimal. Breaking free from this conditioning requires both intellectual understanding and emotional discipline. What's most striking about market cycles is how quickly sentiment shifts. The very same cash position that industry experts mock during bull markets suddenly becomes the most envied asset class when panic sets in. Those who maintained what seemed like excessive caution are suddenly viewed as visionaries. The discipline that appeared outdated becomes recognized as wisdom. Let's consider what happens when an investor who has maintained strategic cash reserves encounters genuine opportunity in a distressed market environment. If you've ever been pressured to be fully invested but resisted, type strategic patience in the comments. Every financial era has its shining stars, investment approaches that seem to rewrite the rules of wealth creation. We've seen this storyline play out repeatedly: tech stocks in the late 90s, exotic derivatives in the mid-2000s, cryptocurrencies in recent years. Each generation becomes convinced that traditional principles no longer apply, that this time is different, and that a new paradigm has emerged, rendering old wisdom obsolete. The awakening that follows these periods of euphoria is often brutal and swift. Behind the spectacular rise and fall of investment fads lies an unchanging pattern of human psychology, the endless cycle of greed and fear playing out with new actors but the same script. And here's the revelation that experienced investors have witnessed repeatedly: when the dust settles, it's typically the boring investors who remain standing. These aren't the headline-grabbing market wizards featured in financial media during bull markets. They're the methodical, disciplined investors who didn't overextend, didn't borrow to speculate, and crucially, maintained adequate cash reserves throughout the mania. Their journey appears unexciting during market frenzies, but their resilience becomes the foundation of lasting wealth. What's fascinating is how quickly perceptions shift during market dislocations. The very same prudence that seemed outdated during exuberant times suddenly becomes intensely attractive during crises. The conservative approach that was mocked as overly cautious transforms into wisdom overnight. This pattern of reassessment reveals a fundamental truth: in investing, survival is a prerequisite for success. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring perhaps the most underappreciated benefit of maintaining cash reserves: its psychological impact. Beyond simply protecting your capital, cash reserves serve a far more crucial function. They protect your ability to think clearly during market turmoil. This mental clarity represents a decisive edge when everyone around you is consumed by panic. Consider the profound difference in decision-making capabilities between two investors during a severe market crash. The first is fully invested, watching their portfolio decline daily with no ability to take advantage of falling prices. Every market drop feels like an emergency, an existential threat demanding immediate action. This investor experiences what psychologists call tunneling, a narrowing of cognitive bandwidth that prevents strategic thinking. The second investor, with substantial cash reserves, experiences the same market events through an entirely different lens. Where others see calamity, they see opportunity emerging. They can calmly assess which assets are genuinely cheap, which businesses remain fundamentally strong despite price declines, and act accordingly. Their decision-making remains unclouded by financial desperation. This contrast in mindset creates a remarkable divergence in outcomes. The fully invested investor often makes precisely the wrong moves at the wrong time, selling quality assets at depressed prices simply to generate liquidity. Meanwhile, the cash-rich investor methodically acquires those same assets at discounted prices, setting the stage for exceptional returns when markets eventually recover. The transformation in perspective that adequate cash reserves provide cannot be overstated. It's the difference between experiencing market declines as threats versus opportunities. This psychological advantage compounds over time as clear thinking during critical moments leads to decisions that dramatically impact long-term wealth creation. But how much cash is enough? And what about the opportunity cost during extended bull markets? These questions require examining another crucial dimension of the cash strategy. If you've noticed how your investment psychology changes based on your cash position, type mental clarity in the comments. There's a counterintuitive reality about wealth creation that rarely gets discussed in mainstream financial media. You don't actually make your money when markets are rising, you make it when markets are crashing. This insight represents one of the most powerful paradigm shifts available to serious investors. While most people celebrate bull markets, the truly life-changing returns are quietly accumulated during those brief windows of extreme fear when high-quality assets sell at significant discounts. The revelation here isn't just theoretical, it's backed by the historical journey of virtually every legendary investor. Look behind the curtain of any remarkable multi-decade track record, and you'll find decisive action taken during periods of maximum pessimism. Warren Buffett didn't build his fortune through steady gains in normal markets. He created generational wealth by deploying massive capital during the 1973-74 bear market, the 1987 crash, the 2000 tech collapse, and the 2008 financial crisis. The challenge, of course, is that these opportunities are only recognized with perfect clarity in hindsight. When you're in the middle of a market meltdown, with headlines screaming about systemic collapse and experts predicting further declines, the emotional landscape makes rational decision-making nearly impossible, unless you've prepared specifically for this moment. When panic distorts prices, the world's best businesses effectively go on clearance, often trading at 50 to 60% discounts to their intrinsic value. But here's the hidden truth. This once-in-a-cycle sale is only meaningful if you can actually participate. Without cash reserves, these rare moments become exercises in regret rather than opportunity. You become a spectator to wealth creation rather than a participant. Subscribe now to continue building your financial fortress with us. Each video provides actionable insights to help you navigate market turbulence with confidence and clarity. This perspective transforms how you view extended bull markets. Instead of celebrating each new high, you begin to view them more soberly, as periods of preparation for the inevitable downturn that will create genuine opportunity. Your mindset shifts from maximizing short-term returns to positioning yourself for long-term advantage. Now, let's explore what really drives poor investment decisions. Conventional wisdom suggests that greed is the primary culprit behind financial mistakes. But experienced investors understand a more nuanced psychological reality. It's not greed, but envy that destroys rational investing. This insight illuminates why otherwise intelligent people repeatedly abandon sound strategies at precisely the wrong moment. The emotional journey typically follows a predictable path. You maintain a prudent approach with adequate cash reserves while watching others achieve seemingly effortless gains in speculative assets. As their returns accumulate, your prudence increasingly feels like punishment. The disciplined approach that once seemed wise now appears overly cautious, even foolish. This psychological pressure becomes nearly unbearable as bull markets extend. What follows is a predictable cascade of rationalization. You begin stretching for yield, considering assets you previously deemed too risky. You start buying investments you don't fully understand, comforting yourself with surface-level analysis. Most dangerously, you convince yourself of the most seductive self-deception in investing, that you'll somehow recognize the perfect moment to exit before the inevitable crash. This pattern of behavior reveals something profound about investment psychology that goes well beyond technical analysis or valuation metrics. If you've ever found yourself abandoning your investment principles due to what others were making, type "fighting envy" in the comments. A powerful mindset shift occurs when you reframe how you perceive cash in your investment strategy. Most investors have been conditioned to view cash as dead weight, an unproductive asset class that drags down overall portfolio performance. But this perspective fundamentally misunderstands the true nature and purpose of liquidity. What if you instead saw cash as stored power, as ammunition ready to be deployed at precisely the right moment? This reframing transforms your relationship with cash entirely. Consider this analogy. You don't carry a weapon because you plan to use it every day. You maintain it because you don't get to choose when genuine threats will appear. The same principle applies to investment cash reserves. You don't hold cash because you expect to use it constantly. You maintain it because you cannot predict when extraordinary opportunities will emerge. Behind the scenes of most investment disasters is the same tragic pattern. Investors who optimize their portfolios for normal conditions, leaving themselves completely unprepared for inevitable periods of market stress. They calibrated their strategy for the expected while ignoring the potential for the unexpected. This journey leads almost inevitably to permanent capital impairment when market conditions deteriorate. The revelation here is that preparedness itself is a form of performance. While others focus obsessively on squeezing every percentage in point of return during favorable conditions, the wise investor recognizes that survival through adverse conditions is the foundation upon which lasting wealth is built. Cash provides that survival capacity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring the profound psychological benefits that come with maintaining adequate cash reserves. There's a unique peace of mind, a freedom from financial anxiety that only those with liquid reserves truly understand. This isn't about luxury or bragging rights. It's about the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can navigate any market condition without being forced into destructive decisions. When markets transform into battlegrounds, which they inevitably do every market cycle, investors separate into two distinct categories: those who enter armed with cash and those who enter hoping merely to survive. This distinction creates dramatically different experiences during market dislocations. One group faces constant fear and reactive decision-making. The other approaches the same environment with clarity and purpose, recognizing that chaos creates opportunity for those prepared to capitalize on it. The impact of this mental state cannot be overstated. Financial decisions made from a position of strength rather than desperation consistently produce superior outcomes. Yet the investment industry rarely discusses this dimension of wealth management, how your cash position fundamentally alters your psychological experience of markets. Consider how differently you experience market volatility when you know you have substantial dry powder ready to deploy. Price declines transform from threats into potential opportunities. Alarming headlines become potential signals of value emerging. Even severe market dislocations lose their ability to induce panic when viewed through the lens of preparedness rather than vulnerability. This dimension of investment strategy extends far beyond mathematical portfolio optimization into the realm of practical wisdom. If you've experienced the psychological freedom that comes with maintaining adequate cash reserves, type "armed, not anxious" in the comments. There's a profound dimension to investment management that rarely gets discussed in financial literature, the moral responsibility that comes with handling other people's money. When you're entrusted with the life savings of others, whether as a professional fund manager or simply as the financial decision maker for your family, you're not just making investments, you're making promises, implicit commitments that when market conditions deteriorate, you won't panic or freeze. This ethical framework transforms how we view cash reserves entirely. What might seem like excessive caution when managing only your own capital becomes prudent stewardship when others depend on your decisions. Think about what's really at stake. Not just abstract numbers on a statement, but college educations, comfortable retirements, healthcare security, and generational legacies. The weight of this responsibility demands a higher standard of risk management. The journey of wealth creation isn't just about maximizing returns, it's equally about protecting what you've already accumulated. There's a fundamental shift in perspective that must occur as portfolios grow, from focusing primarily on getting rich to ensuring you stay rich. This evolution in mindset prioritizes capital preservation alongside growth, recognizing that permanent loss of capital represents the true risk in investment management. Meeting this obligation requires maintaining adequate cash reserves as a buffer against market dislocations. It's not an optional strategy enhancement. It's a core responsibility of prudent stewardship. When others have placed their trust in your judgment, the luxury of being fully invested at all times becomes an unacceptable risk. The duty becomes protecting the foundation, even if it means sacrificing some potential upside. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring perhaps the most underappreciated benefit of maintaining cash reserves: its profound psychological advantage. Cash isn't merely a financial position, it's fundamentally a mental one. It represents the willingness to look temporarily foolish during exuberant bull markets in order to be extraordinarily smart during inevitable bear markets. This courage to appear out of step with conventional wisdom is remarkably rare in investment circles. It requires genuine intellectual independence and emotional discipline. Cash keeps investors humble by serving as a constant reminder that uncertainty is permanent, not occasional. It acknowledges the limitations of our predictive abilities in complex, adaptive systems like financial markets. The revelation here is that the greatest return on cash isn't financial at all, it's psychological. Cash provides three intangible but invaluable assets: independence from market pressures, patience during periods of overvaluation, and perhaps most importantly, the right to do nothing when appropriate. This last advantage may seem counterintuitive in a financial culture that celebrates constant activity, but the ability to calmly observe without feeling compelled to participate represents a decisive edge. This psychological freedom creates space for genuine reflection and analysis, unmotivated by fear or greed. It allows you to make decisions based on intrinsic value rather than relative performance anxieties. In essence, cash transforms your relationship with market volatility entirely, shifting your perspective from reactive participant to strategic observer. But this raises an important question about portfolio construction that few advisors properly address. If you've noticed how having cash changes your emotional relationship with market volatility, type psychological freedom in the comments. As we wrap up this exploration of cash as a strategic asset, I hope you've gained a new perspective on how liquidity can transform not just your portfolio, but your entire relationship with investing. What might have seemed like excessive caution before may now reveal itself as profound wisdom, the kind that's typically only acquired through experiencing multiple market cycles firsthand. The journey to financial independence isn't about capturing every percentage point of return in bull markets. It's about positioning yourself to act decisively during those rare moments of extraordinary opportunity that truly build wealth. It's about cultivating the psychological freedom to think clearly when others panic. And perhaps most importantly, it's about honoring the responsibility we have to protect capital, whether it's our own or entrusted to us by others. If you found value in these insights today, I'd appreciate you hitting that like button. It helps others discover this perspective that runs counter to much of mainstream financial advice. And if you'd like to continue this journey of unconventional financial wisdom, subscribe to the channel for more content that challenges the status quo and offers practical strategies for long-term wealth preservation. I'm curious to hear your own experiences with maintaining cash reserves. If something in today's discussion resonated with you personally, leave a comment with "Cash is my weapon," so I know you made it to the end. There's a video right here about building an all-weather portfolio that complements today's discussion perfectly. Click and continue with me over there to discover how to structure your investments to thrive in any market condition, whether bull, bear, or anything in between.